Hello, Montgomery Catholic. Welcome to Partnering with Parents. It's episode 6. You made it. This means Lent is almost over. This is going to be broadcast on Holy Thursday as we prepare today for the Triduum and then the resurrection. And so much of our faith is getting to be lived out right now. Eileen, this is a really neat time to get to partner with our parents.
It is.
As we just walk this path in our faith, but also walk this path together with our parents of trying to raise these kids, these teenagers, these young people. And so if you are tuning in for the first time, this is the 6th episode of Partnering with Parents, where we tonight will be episode 2 of a 2-part series in how to deal with social media and technology. And so Eileen Aaron, who is our middle school and high school principal, but really, Eileen, this episode, you're not so much the principal.
Right.
You are the expert as a mom. You're the expert as a mom of faith who cares about how their kids are exposed. You're also the wife of one of the most impressive men I've ever met in my life, from a faith standpoint, from a man standpoint. You know, you guys take this very seriously in your home.
We do.
And that's something that's going to come out tonight. So when you're listening to this, don't think, oh, the principal's telling me what to do and what not to do. The school, wants to raise my kids better than me. No.
Not at all.
We want to help you through the things that we see at school. And Eileen, tonight, just from a very human perspective, the things that you guys have tried to do at home yourself.
Right.
So it's pretty exciting. Now, tonight, we also will have a special guest who is going to come in when we hit the Nerd Herd button. Because we're talking about technology, we may hit the button, and I'm not going to do it because he would slide in. Daniel Harbin is going to make a brief entrance and then an even faster exit, and he's going to help us define some of those terms that we may not understand from a technical standpoint. In our script, there are things like routers and modems and things that, honestly, I just know that Daniel has to take care of. So, Eileen, are you ready?
I am.
Let's do this.
Okay.
All right, question number 1 really gets into, we've got parents out there. Let's start with smartphones, okay? Or telephones, period, really. And we've got parents who are probably watching and their kids already have a phone.
Right.
So we may have parents who are thinking about getting their kids a phone. Let's start with the family who has a 17-year-old who got a smartphone when they were 13. This is something they've been dealing with for years. As a parent, you probably have an idea of some of the issues that we've talked about over the last 5 episodes. But what can be done to try to walk back a little bit? How do we arm these parents to have an opportunity to help their kids?
So, the 17-year-old who's had the phone, it's been unlimited access, and you start realizing, oh, maybe that wasn't a great idea. And so you just kind of need to have a conversation with your child and admit, I made some mistakes. This is what I'm seeing and I don't like. And so I'm going to start putting some boundaries on the phone. Probably one of the easiest boundaries you can put on is that it can no longer go in your room. It has to stay out publicly in the kitchen, in the living room. And when you set these boundaries, whatever you determine those to be, know that your child is going to push back, is going to fight it. And that is really what you're going to see because they're so attached and addicted to that phone. So you're going to see a lot of anger and depression. And we've even seen it with our own kids when we've taken their phone as a disciplinary measure. It's pretty miserable for the first day or two because they're so attached to that phone. But just stick with it, be consistent, and know that you're doing it for a good purpose. Know that there's a bigger picture. Keep that goal in mind of why you're doing it.
And something I've seen you and Rick talk about and do, we talk a lot about boundaries, and you have to prioritize those boundaries. You don't want to jump in, if your child has had a smartphone for 4 years, you don't want to jump in and be like, Mr. Costanza and Miss Aaron gave me some ideas, okay? Honestly, we want to talk about boundaries, what's reasonable, and how can we walk back. That's a good way to do it. So let's prioritize those boundaries. All right, so we're going to do a little bit of that tonight. We're going to give you some of those boundary ideas. But let's start with our first Nerd Herd invasion.
Okay.
So we want, as a community, to understand these phones we're talking about. There are smartphones and then there are other phones, and you need to understand the difference between the two. So,
can I hit the button?
Hit it. All right, Nerd Herd, come on in. There he is. So, Mr. Harbin, welcome to Partnering with Parents.
How's it going, guys?
We're talking from a technical standpoint. There are old brick flip phones, then there are these new age devices, the window into the devil's world. Just kidding. A smartphone. So talk about the difference between the two so that a parent understands when they're purchasing a phone what that means.
Well, you're looking at two types. The brick phone is the older phone that we all kind of know, and the first original cell phones.
Nokia Snake, right?
No real big screens, no iPhones, no real big Androids. They look like old phones. They have a normal dial pad with buttons on them, and they usually don't have internet on them and very limited texting capabilities.
So what would they be able to do? They'd be able to make a phone call?
Yes, my kids have that. All they can do is make phone calls and text using the little buttons, and that's about it.
Hey, Mom, Dad, I'm done. Come pick me up.
That's it.
Hey, I'm ready. Give me a call.
Yep.
Okay.
It's communication just like your house phone.
And so a smartphone, is that the only option they have? They can purchase those telephonic devices that only are telephones?
Most definitely. You can get them.
All right, so you're going to be back in a moment when we're going to talk even more technical stuff.
All right.
All right, get out of here.
Thank you.
Now, that's so fun. All right, Eileen.
Yes.
If you're talking to a parent who has not yet purchased a phone, what are some things we would want them to know? And as Daniel described, we know that there's two options. You got a smartphone and the other phone,
The brick.
The brick. But there's more to consider. So
Right.
what are some things to consider?
And really ask yourself the question, why? Why are you considering the phone? Is it really just for communication? I know a lot of kids will say, well, I need to contact my parents after school. But why do they want it? And it really comes down a lot of times, that's how all their friends are communicating. They want to be able to text their friends. But you really need to ask yourself, why? Why am I getting my child a phone? And for your child, make sure you emphasize to them that this is really a privilege. This isn't a right. Not everyone has to have a phone, and this is really a privilege. They're expensive to begin with, and you pay for it.
We see this so many times. Kids are going to tell their parents, I'm the only child who doesn't have a phone in my class.
Right.
I'm the only one.
Right.
And we're here to tell you that that's just not the case.
Right.
Now, they are in the minority if they are in high school and don't have a smartphone. In the middle school, again, probably in the minority. We have a lot more students in the middle school that don't have a smartphone. We even see in the elementary schools, the number of students who have a smartphone is increasing from year to year. But there are families, and you can be one of them, that if you have not jumped into that deep end of the pool yet, you don't have to.
Right. And
You
really,
don't have
you see a lot of this at school, the lack of communication. They don't know how to communicate except through their device. So if you want that for your child, then sure, go for it. Get the phone. But we really need to focus on the reason why.
And you guys at home, as parents, can model that behavior.
Exactly.
How to use the device, what the device should be used for,
Right.
when.
And you're not
all those
on
things.
it. Yeah, you're not on it all the time. We really make it a habit at home that it's nowhere near the dinner table. If we're watching a movie together, we're playing games, no one is allowed having their phones with them. If we go out to dinner, phones stay away.
Absolutely.
So we really have to model that as parents.
It's so important to just remember all the time that kids are watching, period.
Exactly.
All the time. Now, let's talk about some boundaries for social media.
Okay.
Boundaries for technology, period, in your home. Where do we start as parents? What do we need to think about?
So one of the biggest boundaries is that any device, computer, phone, and for us it's even TV, it just doesn't go in the bedroom. They stay out and they're used publicly. If you're going to buy your child a phone, take off the apps before you give them the phone that you don't want them to have.
Okay, so delete an app from your smartphone. Do you think all these parents know how to do that, or
No.
should we hit the button? All right, Mr. Harbin, nerd herd away. How to delete an app from a smartphone?
Okay, if you have an Android phone, you go to the Google Play Store. It's a little triangle. It's orange and blue and green. You hit
Google
that,
Play Store.
and then you can see all your apps, and you select them and hit the little dots on the top, and hit delete, and they're gone. And if you also have an Android or a Chromebook, you can use Google's Family Link, which will allow you to filter and manage apps on both of those. iPhone, hold down the little icon, it'll start to wiggle, hit the minus button for delete, it's gone.
And then just hit the home button and they all stop wiggling.
Yep.
It's interesting.
Yes, it's scary sometimes.
Sometimes it's scary.
It really is. And so again, if you've got an iPhone and you want to delete, say, the FaceTime app so that your child cannot FaceTime, you would just press and hold on the icon, and then the phone vibrates and it starts to jiggle and has a little, either a minus or an X at the top.
Yeah.
It's
And
out.
on the iPhones also, there's a screen time option that'll allow you to restrict all
Right.
those applications. and
Oh, wait,
access.
pause. Talk about screen time options.
Screen time options on an iPhone will allow you to limit certain times with certain apps and allow you to see reports on how your child uses
Right.
that phone. which is really helpful.
Absolutely, which is really super cool. All right, you're going to be back in just a moment, but for now, get out of here. Now, internet-enabled devices is something that we need to understand, and an internet-enabled device means that on the iPad, a tablet, it could be a Kindle, it could be a Kindle Fire, it could be just about anything, a computer, a laptop, a MacBook, a Chromebook, a cell phone, your Xbox, your PlayStation 4, 5, or 6, whatever they're up to, your Roku TV. I mean, you name it. Our homes are flooded with devices that can get on the internet. So, what is it important, to remember about those kinds of devices if I'm a parent and want to protect my kids?
We mentioned a little bit earlier, but deleting the apps you don't want. And then locking, for a phone in particular on the iPhone, locking the app store. So if your child wants to add an app or go somewhere on the internet, they have to come to you first and ask for permission. And you have to type in the code or the password. The other thing for your TV or Xbox, things like that, and your internet, your computer, is the router. Have a filter on your router so you control what comes in and out of your house.
Eileen, I have no idea what you just said.
I don't really know either. I just know my husband takes care of it. So
but let's do it. All right, here he comes. All right, like a red tornado. The question is, Eileen literally just said things like router and filter, and if I'm a parent, what? Do I have control over those things? Are those things we're having for dinner? What?
No, that's the little blinky box that your internet comes through. It usually sits in a closet. Yeah. But
Yes.
that's where all your internet comes from.
Could come from WOW, could come from Charter, Spectrum, something like that.
Yep.
Probably from your internet provider.
And you can subscribe.
Typically doesn't work after it rains. Go ahead.
You can subscribe with them to filtering services like Eileen said, or you can use ones such as OpenDNS, Cloudflare. Those are some of the bigger ones that allow you to filter all the content that comes into your house from that one entry point and not on every single device.
Right.
So a parent at home may not be an expert, so should they just call their internet provider and say, I want to talk about filters?
Yep, they'd love to talk to you and sell it to you.
We use the word router. What is a router?
It just makes sure that your home internet stays segregated from everybody else's internet.
Okay. Yeah. Now, while you're here, just to keep your legs are working hard tonight, when we talk about those routers and modems, should they be password protected at home? What and why is that important? I know this is just another different topic that we could go down, but is that important?
Most definitely. If it's password protected, it keeps your neighbors off of it, it keeps anybody else off of it, but it also allows you to restrict access to anyone who you want to.
Right.
So you can change that password at any time and basically kick everybody in your household off. So if your child has got another device or there's something you don't know it's using your internet or you think something up, you can change that password and everything quits working for the internet.
All right, thank you so much. Those are great definitions. And as he exits, he mentioned having the internet security password there. If I'm a parent, particularly a parent of a high school student, you're probably going to have other high schoolers come to your house.
Right.
And those parents may not have the same filters, may not have the same iPhone or cell phone restrictions, boundaries, we like to say. So you could limit. Now we can't limit if they're using their own data. That's a whole other thing.
Right.
But if they have to have Wi-Fi to do the things that they have to do, you as a parent have control over the Wi-Fi.
Exactly.
And that's important.
It is. It is.
So many things are important tonight. Now, talk real quick. You mentioned about phones in the bedroom. You know, it's my alarm clock. That's where I charge it.
Right.
That's where I want to use it.
Right. And we've had those arguments. Our kids don't enjoy it, but. We buy them just a regular alarm clock. They want to go FaceTime friends. That has to be done in public. And they've gotten used to it. Yes, it was tough at first. When they've gone around the things we've set up, the boundaries we've set up, and they've gone past those boundaries, we've usually taken their phone. And that was tough. But I think they understand where we're coming from. And I will say, it was tough as they were younger and as they're teenagers. But our older children have come back now and said they appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
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 Because they're out in the real world and now they see the dangers of all the things that they had to face.
Yes.
And that takes communication at home.
It does.
It takes communication between you and your spouse.
Yes, absolutely.
And then you have to communicate with your kids.
Yes.
You and I tonight, a great example of poor communication, like, hey, Eileen, what are you going to wear? You wear pink? Good, me too. We could have called and talked. So tonight,
texted.
this is brought to you by Pretty in Pink and In Pink. Now, what if I find out that my son or daughter, and this is where let's get serious for a second, is watching pornography or is viewing pornographic images, and you as the parent find this out. And this could be boys, this could also be girls.
Right.
Let's just be honest.
If you listen, last week's, it's so easy to get to those sites. You don't mean to, you're looking for some kind of health site, but it is so easy to go somewhere or for an ad to pop up and take you somewhere where you don't intend to go. And so that can happen. Just as a parent, try to stay calm. Just assume it's going to happen and know how you're going to react ahead of time. And just have that conversation with them. Talk to them about why it's inappropriate, why we don't objectify women, or whatever it may be that they've gone to. And then I would recommend taking the phone. Take the phone for however long you think is appropriate, and let them show you that they can handle it, and kind of go step back to using it.
One of the things I have enjoyed watching you and Rick model, not only with your own kids, but here at school, because we find ourselves in these situations at school where students are exposed to things we don't want them to be exposed to, or students participate maybe in activities or taking photos or whatever it may be. Something you're so good about helping them see is, that person that they're viewing, whether it's a video or an image, is somebody's daughter, somebody's son, a child of God, and also, hopefully, someone's future husband or wife. And then I love how you always say, now think of your future husband, your future wife. Do you want them in either role? Do you want them the person on the screen? Do you want them to be the person who's watching?
They're viewing it,
And it changes that perspective. And parents, if you are bold enough to have that conversation with your child, it will register. It may not register the first time. It will sink in. You just mentioned, Mitch goes off to Catholic University and comes home and says, thank you. Well, it was tough. It was hard. And I guarantee he's probably still not getting it all right.
And that's okay, as long as I know that we are trying and he is trying.
Absolutely. That's why you have 5 kids. You get one of them right eventually, right?
The 5th one will get it right.
I love it. Now, the idea of having tough conversations is probably not something that a mom or a dad is excited about. It also could happen in advance, meaning that your student hasn't participated in that yet, but you could have the conversation. Or maybe they hear about another student struggling with it, ability to view it, and those conversations are not happening in high school. They're really needing to be middle school, 5th and 6th grade. It's really important to start those conversations so they're kind of natural and organic then. And you've always had that conversation as they get older and the temptations are greater. And one thing that we always say too, if we're going to take the phone away from a student or from your child and your family, that is something they spend a ton of time on every day. So if I've now taken that away, I as a parent really need to help them fill that time.
Exactly, which isn't a bad thing. And that's the we used to go as kids, we used to go outside and play a lot, and we could spend our time out there, and for our parents, they really didn't, have to monitor us. And so I think we've kind of switched now, and it's easy to give them a device or technology, and that fills their time. But when you take the phone away, which is a good thing, and I know, and I think I said this earlier, that with my own children, it was tough. In those first few days, it was a battle, and they were mean, but afterwards, boy, the communication was better. We were hanging out with each other. It was enjoyable. And so you do have to fill that time, but you can fill it with conversation, with, taking a walk, going outside, playing games. There's all kinds of things you can do.
Yeah. Lauren Hoyer, who's been on Partnering with Parents now a couple of times, and her husband, Dennis, who deals with the addiction and abuse side of so many of these ugly things we're talking about. Even a phone itself can be a part of this developed addiction.
Yes, absolutely.
And then the body has to cope without having it. And that's super tough.
And you have to replace it with something healthy.
Something healthy, not just something healthy.
Yeah.
So really neat. great ideas there. And families, that's going to look different in all of your homes. It looks different in my home than it does in the Aaron household. And it has to be something that you, your family, wants to engage in. And you're going to have to teach your kids to want to do those things. Whether it's board games and playing cards or sitting around and talking, or maybe spending a little time watching TV together in a healthy way, but we don't want to take one screen away and plug in another. So let's be careful how we do that. But family movie nights that are healthy, and spending time together, and popping popcorn, and it sounds so simple, but that's important.
Right.
You mentioned in one of our previous episodes, this really struck a chord with me. You can also model these behaviors when the boyfriends and the friends and the girlfriends come to your house.
Yes.
Because you get to be part, they want to come be part of your family.
Right.
Show them what that means.
Right.
And I love the idea of somebody coming into the Aaron household and just kind of falling into the fun and being part of the family.
Right.
And, it's just, that's a really neat opportunity for you guys to model that behavior.
Right.
So, super cool. You guys are just the coolest. Does Rick know that? Does he know he's super cool?
No.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. So a major common issue that we have, Snapchat. And we won't hit the button on this one because you should have watched episode 5 where we spent a lot of time on Snapchat. Snapchat is a disappearing media app where you can send pictures or text or both, and then it goes away.
Right.
Now, there are obviously ways that it can be captured, but this becomes a way for people to communicate.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you, parents, if you have ever seen your teen with their phone and they are scrolling through and then they just take it and their face goes weird and they get half of the picture is of the roof, it's just like the corner, they're probably sending a Snapchat to say, hey, I'm here. Hey, I got your snap.
Right.
And to continue a streak.
The streak.
It tracks how many days in a row that you have talked to that person.
Right. Well, not really talked. You've just taken pictures.
Talking is exactly right. So this is a very negative form of communication.
Yes.
Talk about that a little bit.
So with Snapchat, it was just too great of a temptation for our kids that with the disappearing media, and so you could choose one form of social media. It could be Facebook, Instagram, and really that was it at the time. And we had to be friends with them on it. They could communicate through text. And so they would say, we want this phone and we want to communicate with our friends. And we'd say, well, if they're really your good friends, you would have their phone numbers and you could at least text. But otherwise, Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, all those social media things, another downfall to them is they're comparing themselves to those kids. They're comparing them to what they see out there and what they think life should be like, and then they start feeling bad about themselves, and there's just too many issues. So we always made sure one of us were friends with them on that social media, and so we could kind of monitor what they were posting, what they were referring to, what they were texting.
Absolutely. And then all this kind of comes full circle because you said, hey, we want you to learn to communicate well, and we want you to do it in the right way, in the right place. And we mentioned not having that device in the room.
Yes.
Buy them an alarm clock, plug it in your room, the parents' room, so that it can charge overnight. You can talk to your service provider about setting time limits that the device even works.
Right.
Particularly for data usage and those types of things. So there's lots of ways that you can kind of lock down and set boundaries there. But the time limits that they're allowed to spend on a social media site itself is important.
And we've done that as well.
Yeah. And it takes being on the same page with your spouse.
It does. It does. And it wasn't always easy. Rick was a little firmer on this than I was. And then when I saw it as the older girls, as I saw the amount of time they're on the phone, I was like, okay, we've got to do something about this.
So talk a little bit about what we see at school, and I know that some of our parents deal with this. We have single-parent households, we have divorced households where these kids split time between the two. Any advice that you have seen from the school perspective or as a mom? It really comes down to communication between the parents.
It does.
But what could we say to encourage them?
I would assume as parents, you're both on the same page. You want the best for your child. And so if you can agree on that we do need to keep limits, we do need to keep boundaries around these devices, that would be helpful. If you can communicate that.
And you don't want to use your child or the device as a wedge.
Exactly.
You know, you
right.
don't want it to be something that, oh, well, when you're at my house, you get this
Right.
device. When you're at mom's house, you don't.
Right.
We do see that,
Right.
and it can drive a wedge between within the family,
Right.
and then it puts the power in the hands of the child.
Yeah.
And what's dangling in the middle are all the threats of having this device. Which
Yeah,
is
it's
the
all
whole reason
dependent.
we've been talking.
Right.
So, you know, that's super important.
That
That's
is.
something that all parents, we recognize. You know, it's not easy. There's no textbook for this. There are some fancy cue cards, but there's no textbook. We
Right.
can't even hit the button and Daniel come in and be like, well, this is what you need to do. So you can reach outside of your family unit, though,
Right.
and talk to the parents of your friends,
Right.
or you know, of your kids' friends. You can connect in that parent group, and I think that you're going to find that you're not the only one, and they're going to empower you to try to get it right.
Right. Your kids will tell you, "Oh, Mom, you're the only one." All my friends have this, but there are parents out there, you know, still in the middle school and elementary that their kids don't have phones, and find those parents and use them as your support.
That's right. And as a Catholic school, we're always going to encourage you in these difficult times. Lean into the sacraments.
Right.
God's grace is powerful. It'll work in your life and give you the strength as a parent.
Right.
And with your spouse, whoever it is that you're co-parenting with.
Right.
But God will fill those gaps when we don't know what to do and when we get it wrong. And we say that week after week, but we mean it.
I really do. I mean, you can't do this without God present in this and without prayer. We had a priest once tell us that your only responsibility as a parent is to get your children and your spouse to heaven, and nothing else really matters. So
Now you regret having 5 kids. No.
it gives
More
me
work
practice,
for
more
you.
practice.
Oh, I'm just joking. The task is great. We say that week after week.
Yeah.
And you may not all have a Rick or an Eileen Aaron in your corner you feel like at home, but when you're partnering with Montgomery Catholic, you do.
You do.
She's here. You are here,
Yeah.
we are here, but really this community is more than just one of us. This community is a community that's committed to this. It's why you're tuned in to partnering with parents in the first place. It's why you've given of your time. You know, I'll brag real quick. We've got such great people. A couple of people come to mind on these partnering with parents. A Sinead Turner, a Sarah Berg, somebody who they're tuning in week after week. They're faculty members in our high school, and they are the ones who are living it day in and day out in the classroom,
Right.
where they're seeing all this.
Right.
But then they're also moms
Right.
of kids going through this.
Right.
You are too.
Yeah.
You know, you got a high school girl.
Yeah.
They have high school girls. I'm not ready for it. But I watch the grace that you guys have, and you admit first and foremost that you may not have all the answers.
Right.
But
And
in
we
this
don't always get it
community-
right.
In this community, you have the ability to fall on each other.
Right.
And as we say, lean into the sacraments, and God's grace fills the cracks.
Yeah.
It's pretty unbelievable.
It is.
All right, well, this concludes Partnering with Parents, our Lenten season of Partnering with Parents. Episode 6 is in the books. On behalf of all of us, behind the scenes, the nerd herd man himself, Daniel Harbin, has been with us for 6 straight weeks behind the camera. Elena Baranco, our high school counselor, has been with us. She and Daniel work hard behind the camera to make us look as good as we look.
can.
And half the time they get it really right. We are so pleased and thankful. We'll tune in once a month now for Partnering with Parents. Well, we will be live with you to tackle the tough topics and to get all, as you said, all of our kids, all of our spouses, and everybody in this community to heaven.
To heaven.
Let's all be saints. All right. Go Saints, go Knights, and good night.
Good night.